Anna Adams, thank you so much for joining me all the way from Sonoma and on your holiday. So I'm really, really, really appreciative for spending some of your last hours on holiday with me.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to talk about everything with you.
Cool, thank you. We just started talking about all kinds of interesting things. I keep doing this. I should remember to to wait for live because there's so much value in all the shortcuts. I think that's pretty much kind of your passion or your how to create automation, how to use tech and avoid the overwhelm. Tell me a little bit about why tech and how did you get into this whole avenue of coaching, I suppose, is what you really do.
Yeah, I have a really winding story. I did not get here traditionally.
Yeah.
Um, I actually went to art school before I
Yeah.
got my liberal arts degree. And then I got a liberal arts degree in English lit. So like I don't have a business background, but I grew up in the tech space. My dad ran one of the biggest .com companies during the 2000 .com bubble. Um,
Okay.
and my grandfather started an airline. So I have been surrounded by people who are in business my
Yeah.
whole life and innovating and disrupting. And when I finished college, I wanted a challenge. So I moved to Silicon Valley and I joined a startup that was an interesting mix of technology and luxury experience.
Okay.
So it was an interesting avenue of my previous life in luxury travel into the tech side of things. And then I moved into advertising technology after that. And I ran programmatic essentially, it's kind of like what I used to do is very much like what we're seeing now with things like ChatGPT.
Hmm.
So we were using massive data sets to better serve advertising across platforms. So better Facebook ads, better Google ads, better ads that follow you around the internet, but also exclusively on your mobile phone.
Oh,
That
interesting.
was an incredibly I used to tell people that I hated spreadsheets, that I hated data, like that I did not do well with them.
Yeah.
I love them. So, doing that allowed me to figure out how much I love all of that kind of information, and also taking all of that information and figuring out how to use it effectively to make things easier, to do something
Mm,
better, um, take to let you focus on what you do best
mm,
while the tech does the stuff that you don't wanna do or the stuff that you shouldn't need to do. Um,
mhm.
and then I left tech because I burned out every 18 months like clockwork. And,
Okay.
um, it's one of the things I found in the work that I do is that my favorite thing is working with people who are in the beginning of their businesses, in the beginning of what they're building, because you wanna learn, you wanna grow, you're really excited about, and passionate about what you're building and working on, but you're often stuck. And technology, what I hear over and over again is technology is the thing that keeps people from moving forward. And that's not what should happen. Technology should not be the thing that is overwhelming. Technology should be the thing that helps you do what you do at scale, do what you do more easily, so that what you really focus on is the stuff that you love to talk about. And I actually love to talk about the tech side of things. So it's a perfect balance for me. And I hear a lot from people about how I need to hire an assistant. I need to figure out how to offload this because it's something that I don't like to do and I don't have time to do. And when you're running a small business, when you're running on a shoestring budget, the idea of having to hire somebody is exciting, but it's also terrifying. Like, how are you going to pay that person? How are you going to make sure that all of that revenue is steady enough that you have enough to give that person to do? In most cases, in the beginning, technology the should do the heavy lifting for you. It should be how you should be able to automate before you delegate in a lot of cases. There are still things that require human interaction. We are never fully going to hand over the world and our businesses and the admin side of things to technology. I firmly believe that. I think AI is there. AI and all of these different tools and all of this technology is there to make it easier. Like, I hate creating content on social media, but I have a system that lets me build all of the content I need for a month or two in a couple of hours. And then I have a scheduling tool that takes all of the heavy lifting off and makes sure it all gets put into a queue. And now I don't have to think about it because it all gets done at once, and I don't have to worry about remembering every day to get online and deal with it.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, as entrepreneurs or small business owners, you have so many things to kind of keep in mind, and you want to be creative because many of us do this because we want an outlet for our own passions and creativity, and then to kind of split it into, well, as Perry would say, non-linear and linear,
Right.
and have the AI do the linear kind of stuff so that you can be non-linear enough to still have your business going.
Exactly.
So Lauren reckons you are the tech wizard that everybody needs.
Well, Lauren has seen me pull some really interesting things out of my hat in the last few weeks, for sure.
Well, I imagine that's a lot around tech is kind of managing the fact that it doesn't always run smoothly.
It doesn't always run. This is the thing that I demonstrate this a lot in my own community and with my own clients and members. It's even for someone like me who is really savvy, who's used to using technology, who plays with it all the time, there are still things that I don't have no control over. There are still times when something breaks and I'm like, I can't actually fix this for you, but I can tell you what happened and what to like and how to get the support to do it. And I think the other thing that technology is Mickey's right. Tech is changing so fast, and keeping up with it is hard enough, even when you're not someone who wants to use it. So the other thing that I keep running into is business owners are like crows. We all have shiny object syndrome at some point, especially in the beginning, because everything sounds like a shortcut. Everything sounds great, especially because all of these coaches are selling these easy methods that worked for them. And that's alluring and enticing and exciting. And then everybody gets let down because it doesn't work for them the same way. And so it's understanding that you don't need a lot of tech. You need to pick the tools that work for you the way you work, and you need to lean into what works for you instead of what worked for somebody else.
And that's what I love about your perspective on tech and your platform, Otto, which you created, which we'll chat about just now. It's not about learning how to use MailerLite or learning how to, use Trello, or it's about finding the right tools that work for you and the way that you approach your business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because we all do things very differently, and the 5-step plan doesn't always work for me or
Right.
at all anymore. Yeah.
And one of the things is my role and goal is always to give you boundaries and guideposts so that you know what you can be aiming for, but everybody's needs are also still different. So my biggest rule is I will give you a best recommendation based on what we talk through and what I know about you. But and I'm always happy to give that advice. I'm always happy to have that conversation, even if it's just that conversation. But if you make that decision and you're like, okay, I got this and it's the right tool, but I don't know how to use it, that's also what Otto is for. I love the work. I love being able to make those recommendations and help you feel in control of the tools that you are using. But I also know that knowing how to use them is half the battle. And the reality is, I don't ever expect that that we teach you to do something in your business, that you're going to do it indefinitely. My biggest goal is I want you to know how it works so that when you eventually grow and hire somebody or offload it to a VA, that you know enough to know whether or not they're doing the job you hired them to do and they're executing it. Because if you hire somebody to do something in your business that you don't understand, how do you gauge whether or not they're actually executing what you've asked them to?
And also to have the manage your expectations. That's the term. Because once you've done it, you kind of know what can and maybe can't be done necessarily.
Right, and you might have a vision for how you want it to work, or you have a process for what the endpoint needs to look like, and if you can't clearly outline what that means, handing it off to somebody means that their version of what you've asked for is not gonna be the same thing because you didn't give them a step-by-step or a standard operating procedure to do it. It's the same logic, actually. I've been even on vacation, I'm having these conversations. I've spent the entire weekend talking about AI. And one of the things that we've been talking about is how even if you take a prompt that like, even if you give 5 people the same prompt and they tweak it just slightly to their language, their voice, or even their business, what ChatGPT will pop out can be completely different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's still this idea that your endpoint vision is still different than my endpoint vision, even if we're
Yeah.
talking about the same thing at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, that's a lot about delegation, is trying to communicate what you actually want if you are still discovering it all.
Right.
I just want to say hi, Mickey. Thank you so much for joining us. It's lovely to have you here. And that's exactly what it is. Knowing what will work and what is bull is the toughest part of the new business person. And to experiment with it yourself is really, I suppose, the best way to kind of get there.
I think it really is, but I also think it's helpful to have somebody who has tested a bunch of different things
Yeah.
and isn't pushing you to say this is my um this is my tool, and my tool is the best option because it works the best for the way I work, and the thing that I want you to build is exactly like me.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the thing that's important because you want to have people who um are looking at the big picture, who are saying, I've tried all of these, and this tool works really well if you want to do X, Y, and Z. And this one is great if you want to do A, B, and C. And this one is great if you need to do a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Or this is a tool you want that's going to get you started and move you forward until you scale. But also, people don't make those recommendations unless they have context. And that's the biggest thing for me, is the context of what you are doing in your business makes all the difference into what you need, what you should be using, what you could be using, and choosing the right tool that works for the way your brain works.
Well, that's it. And I love that. I mean, Mickey was on here now as well. She works with human design, and it's something that you also, it's not just about the tool and the tech and all that. It's also about the person behind the business, and to bring that out in your content that you create, or how you create it, or how you connect with your audience.
Exactly.
And as Lauren's saying, loving AI for podcast show notes transcribing, total game changer. Another Anna Adams recommendation. Yeah, and we had it just before we went live. We had a quick kind of touch on something called Cast Magic, which seems to be the new thing to kind of look out for.
That's actually, I think, what Lauren is talking about. I recommended it to her, and she
Yeah.
signed up for it.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. Well, I'm going to have to go and check it out now as well.
I think it's definitely a helpful podcast. The thing that I love about podcasts is they're such a great way to create connection and community, and for people to learn from each other. I have podcasts that I listen to every day. I have podcasts that I am an avid subscriber of. But one of the things that nobody realizes is that they're amazing, but they're a lot of administrative work on the back end.
Exactly. And yeah, as you say, it's notes and transcribing, and at the end of the day, you know, when you do a podcast and you put all that in, or you have a piece of long form content, and you've done I just did a hour 45-minute recording conversation with Anshar last week, and now there's so much to do with it, but it all takes time.
Right.
You know, and understanding the different platforms and optimizing and all of that. So to get an AI kind of perspective to it is ideal. Yeah, Lawrence's Cast Magic is awesome.
Yes. Really, the thing that I think about with technology is that technology should do the heavy lifting that you don't need to do, that does not require as much human input. And that by doing things like having it create, even if it's just a first draft, at least it's given you something to start with and tweak. And then you're not spending an hour and a half or 2 hours writing it all out and tweaking it. You're spending 10 minutes letting it create everything, and then you are spending 15 minutes or 30 minutes tweaking it. And then as you get better, as you get more used to the way it works, it becomes faster and easier, and your workflow changes. And now you know that it's the most time you're going to spend on your podcast is recording the episode.
Which is the fun part if you're doing a podcast, really.
Exactly. And and also the thing that I love about podcasts is that people learn in different ways. I am, for instance, I'm a visual and audio learner. So I like being able to see it. Like I loved being able to see everything on the board when I was in college.
Yeah.
But I remember things by hearing them more consistently. And so for me, I need to be able, I like to be able to read it, absorb it, and then I like to hear it in context. And so for me, when I have training content, I want a transcript of every training video. And then so that I can jump to the point where I need to where I get to the step-by-steps, because a video doesn't go fast enough for the way my brain processes. But I can speed up an audio file faster than I can speed up a video.
And just going back to that quickly, I mean, there's fascinating fact about Anna Adams. She reads 20 books a week.
Yes, on average.
That's quite a special skill, I would say.
And honestly, if we didn't have digital books, I would look like a hoarder. So
I can just imagine. Yeah.
So I love to read. I love to absorb content that way. But I also know that, like, for me, that works really well for my brain works, but not everybody wants to read. Like, for instance, my siblings hate reading. So I know that if I need to get them to learn something, I need to show it to them. So for me, it's all about video content. Like, I create video content all the time.
And Mickey says she thinks about reading 20 books a week. I think about 26. Yeah.
He probably comes across 20 books a week that sound interesting. Yes.
Yeah. So imagine now if we can put Mickey's thinking into word form. Transcribing thoughts is always a great thing that AI could maybe, start looking into.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like at a certain point we're going to end up with, I mean, we've got text to speech and text to image. Eventually we're going to get thought to word, thought to image, thought to export.
Yeah.
We're going to have Google glasses with electrodes on our brains.
Yeah, that's getting a bit scary. Well, Elon Musk is also doing some interesting things with chips and brain and all that kind of stuff. And Chris is also Chris says he has learned to love reading.
I want to know if Chris has learned to love reading from also writing his book, because his book is one of those really amazing ones to go back to on a daily basis.
And I actually just popped in to see this week, so today's thing, and it's all about inspiration. So really cool book, and constant inspiration from that one.
Indeed. Chris, everybody should check out the Red Chair Experience from Chris Michelle.
Exactly. So Anna, tell us a little bit quickly about Otto and what kind of inspired that. And I'm going to say just something really weird. I'm just going to pop off because my daughter is locked outside. She's taking a key. So I'm just going to remove myself, and I'll be back in 2 seconds. But if I leave her outside, I'm just going to be distracted the whole time.
No, totally get it. Go let her in. So for those of you who don't know me, I created Otto, which stands for Overcome the Tech Overwhelm, to help business owners deal with technology and implementation and figuring out the right tools. So a lot of what we've just been talking about how to learn to use the technology you already have to help figure out which tools you could use, what tools you're missing, what you're trying to accomplish, what technology can take off your plate, and make your life easier with. And it came about because I kept hearing over and over and over again in my community that technology was this massive stopping point, and that people couldn't pick a tool. And once they picked a tool, they couldn't figure out how to implement it, and they couldn't figure out how to connect it to the other things they were already using. And it's overwhelming when you don't know how to when you don't know what you need to do this to build this idea that you have, and then once you're in it, you're like, okay, I have it. Now what do I do with it? Or there are too many tabs and there are too many subtabs and I don't know how to navigate this.
Yeah.
And tech customer support is really technical in nature. It's not tech companies and software companies are getting better at creating knowledge bases that really teach you how to use things, but they're really driven around troubleshooting and things breaking, and because that's the way engineers think. They don't really think through end user needs. And so I created Otto to sort of give you a safe space to ask all of those questions, to know that you have a resource, to have a community where you can learn from each other and also from me. And every time someone asks for something, we talk through it. I build a walkthrough recorded training video for it. We break it down into step-by-steps. We do 2 live coaching calls a month where everybody can jump in and ask questions live and talk to each other, and we go down some really fun rabbit holes. And then it also includes weekly Voxer coaching. So 1 day a week, everybody can jump on Voxer, which is a voice walkie-talkie app for those of you who don't know.
Yeah.
And you can literally send me voice messages or text messages anytime during that day and ask for help on anything that you are thinking about in your business. And while Otto is really tech oriented, tech is really a smaller piece of a much bigger whole. And so there are a lot of times where you'll ask me something about tech and I will return and ask you a much bigger question about what you're trying to accomplish or what you're already using, or what the end goal is, so that we can pick the right tool, or we can talk about why you don't need to pick something new. And then from there, we build out whatever you need, whether that's a walkthrough training video, or we just process through what you need on Voxer, or whether or not we do a live, or I do a much more in-depth thing. Like, for instance, I use Heartbeat for community management, and I have set up Otto on Heartbeat, but I'm also setting up clients on Heartbeat, and I have a whole walkthrough about how to set up Heartbeat with templates and checklists, so that it's also not, you have to do this, and this in the right order. Here's the checklist of everything that needs to be done before you turn it on. And you can work on the pieces that you need to work on as you go. Yeah. They're in an order that makes sense, but not everybody is a linear process, like step-by-step oriented person. So giving you a checklist that you can just run into or just check in with when you need it is a great way to have a high level set of help.
And there's the community element. So, it's not just everybody's running to you. Sometimes we learn even more from the people that are struggling through the same stuff that we are, whether it's setting up an email list, which we'll chat about quickly in a minute, or, website or whatever it is. But to have that community element is also such a valuable kind of aspect.
Well, and I think the amazing thing about Otto too is that we have people in Otto who are doing incredibly complex things and are farther along in their businesses. And then we have people who are just starting out. And some people who are just like, I don't have a business, but I just need somebody to help me with all the weird tech stuff that I run into. And I love that everybody gets something from it in the way that they need to. And they're learning from each other, because the people who are farther ahead in their businesses are seeing new ways that people are starting out that didn't really work or didn't exist when they started. So they're seeing ways to optimize and streamline and change their businesses where they are already. And the new people are seeing what is possible by using technology and seeing how technology is being implemented in a business that has been around for longer and is at a different stage of scaling.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and it brings those two together, because, as you say, often tech support or trying to figure it all out through that avenue is your blood pressure might rise more than needed.
One of the things that I do often now, I've also realized, is that within Otto and without Otto, because I do this for people in my personal life, I sometimes, if what we're running into is not something that is solvable by implementation or by just walking through it so that you can see it, and it's really a tech issue, I will go deal with tech support and get the answer and then follow up and deal with it. Because as my friends say, I have the patience of Job with tech, with customer support people who are really not the problem, but are not helping either.
Yeah, but it's also a language thing. I mean, if you're
Mhm.
talking to a tech person and you're not using tech language, it's just going past each other. And yeah.
Exactly. So in a lot of cases, I will already know how to troubleshoot most things. But if it's really tech oriented, or I have to go yell at somebody because it's broken and they are not giving a an update on actually how they're working to fix it, then I get to go I can be that. I'm good at being the bad guy in that case, but I'm also good at getting the answers because I speak tech.
That's it. That's it. And that's what we all need as Mickey's saying, Team Anna, like rock star.
Vicky, I love you.
Checks in the mail. So Anna, you are going to be our host of our masterclass on Thursday at 4 p.m. BST, which is you are on Mountain Time, so that's
9 a.m.
9 a.m. Okay.
Yes, I'm on Pacific time right now, and it's 8:27.
Well, this is very tricky with the US. I mean, it's all fair and well, but there's different time zones in the same states, and I just can't keep up all this.
Yeah, no, trust me, I get it. I work with people on 3 continents right now. It's definitely an adventure. And people go on, some countries do daylight savings time, some countries do not. Some states in the United States do not do daylight savings time.
Oh, really?
Arizona doesn't do daylight savings time. So half the year they're on California time and half the year they're on Denver time. And there is a small town in the corner of Indiana that doesn't have daylight savings time. So in the state of Indiana, if you cross this town's borders, your clocks are supposed to change.
Oh, that's not confusing at all. I give
No,
up.
not at all.
No. So tell me about email. Yeah, it's not always about the how and which platform and which buttons and all that. Sometimes it's about the ways that you do it.
It is. And here's the thing. Social media has made so many people talk about how email is obsolete, how human connection at an individual level is not required, that you can reach the masses. And in the beginning, I felt like that there were a lot of people who really bought into that. And social selling has become the new baseline for how to grow and how to build a business and how to make sales. But the reality is, being on someone else's platform puts you at the whims of their algorithm, of the changes they make that they don't share, that they do not purchase, that they don't warn people about ahead of time. The number of times I have had oh my God, all of my Instagram content is no longer showing up and I have 0 views and I'm not getting any visibility because the algorithm changed.
Yeah.
Email is one of the best tools because there are still things that you have to worry about. Things like privacy concerns and changes to tracking that have happened in the last 18 months. But email is still the most solid way to create lasting connection in a place where someone has already invited you in. And as a projector in human design, that's actually a really important thing that I think about because I need to be invited. And so the act of someone choosing to opt into your email list is really important because they're telling you, I want to hear from you. I want to know about what's going on in your ecosystem. And it's also a place where you can create long and short form content. There are so many different ways that you can do that. There are personalized emails that feel like you're getting an email from a friend, which is my preference, that don't have a lot of styling or layout design in them, but have things like GIFs and funny graphics.
I'm just thinking of Mickey's.
Right, Mickey's really great at those emails.
Yeah, they're brilliant. It's like I was drinking my coffee this morning, and it feels very personal, which is so nice. Because I know what her workstation looks like, and I know about all those things from those emails.
Right, and it's a great way to help people really lean in. And it's a way to be in front of them in a space that they are already engaged with. Because the thing about things like social media even as much as we are all on it and as we are also streaming live on it right now.
On 3 places on
It's
yeah.
email is dedicated. People are in their inboxes every day.
Mhm.
People can ignore social media. They can scroll mindlessly. They can miss something important in their feed. And that's arguably why I don't recommend things like setting up Facebook groups for similar reasons, because we're already over inundated with notifications that if you're trying to make sure that the important stuff is getting in front of somebody, it's not going to happen on social media. It's going to happen in their inbox. It's going to happen in text messages, and we are moving into an era of text message marketing. And for instance, my youngest siblings are 21.
Yeah.
And they're like, we have an email address. Do I check it? No. Do I really need it? I don't think so. They would much rather have sign up for a text message marketing list than an email list, which that just makes me cringe. Like, for so many reasons. I'm like, this is like the new version of robocalling. But in email, it's, you build trust, really. Like, that's really the way I think about it, is you are building a bridge, and you are building
Also
ways for people to engage with you and in a way that works for them. And it gives, and in when it's done well and you're doing it and you're paying attention, you're giving people calls to action. You're selling, but they're not feeling like they're being sold to. You're giving them ways to engage. Mickey does a really good job of asking people to reply, and that's also a great way to create connection that makes them feel like they're you're the only one getting that email. And that's the goal, is you want it to be customized and warm and personable. But
and also that my input matters, because I remember Mickey was asking about a podcast, and I think about it often, about which podcasts, which you think is good or whatever, just from an email.
Well, and one of the things that I really love to do is I like to ask a question where so for instance, when you join Auto, you get one of the first emails you get in my welcome sequence is, I have a question that asks you to tell me what of these like 5 categories you are most like focused on right now. Doesn't have to mean it's the only thing you want to focus on, but I want to know what you're stuck on. What's the biggest thing you're stuck in your business? What's the biggest thing you want to implement right now? And I have 5 buckets, and I ask you to just click the link. And by clicking the link, it automatically segments you in my email list. So I know that anytime I'm creating that content around that, you should be absolutely getting that email. It also lets me know that that's the kind of categories that it needs to be inside Auto's training library, so that you can just enroll in that module of the training library that's just around that, and everything that you need, everything we build, and as it builds, will be in that bucket for you.
Yeah. And it also gets you helps you to get to know your audience.
Exactly. So I want to get to know you as much as I want you to get to know me. And that's the part of it, has to be a bridge. And eventually everybody ends up in the middle of the bridge talking to each other. And that's the other thing that makes email great. Email is versatile enough that you can sell a high ticket product. You can sell a $9 product, a $9 membership. You can sell a one-off. You can just make it a space that is safe for people and they feel heard and seen. You can't sell a $5,000 product on social media. It doesn't work the same way. You can't run ads for something like that. But you can talk about what is coming, what's being built, what you're excited about, and solicit feedback in emails in a way that you just can't on so many other platforms.
Yeah. And it also becomes a global thing. I mean, as we both work with people in different countries and continents, and there's preferences. In America, you don't really use WhatsApp as much as we do in Europe, or even South Africa. Then there's the demographics, like, am I on TikTok, or am I only on Instagram, or do I prefer Facebook, or am I just communicating on LinkedIn? And it becomes just too much. So email is kind of that, as you say, that also kind of the bridge which connects all these platforms together, so that when I am on Facebook, I can connect there, or
Right. And I think that The thing that's really also important is that you can share ways, you can grow your email list with social media. But by doing that, you are sending people off a platform that you have zero control over
Exactly.
and into your ecosystem, to your website, to your email list, to the places where people are going to truly engage with you and come back to. And emails are a great way to send people back to your website, to your podcast, to your blog posts, to YouTube videos, to all of the various content that you're creating that is also still being multi-purposed in other places. But email is a great way to get people to that long form content. And those are people who are already saying, yes, I wanted to be here. This is what I've been looking for.
Yeah.
And so one of the biggest things I also say is don't violate that trust. Don't spam people. Use it judiciously.
Yeah.
But the thing that I also love is it's versatile. I can send an email that looks like you're getting an email from a friend that just came from my Gmail inbox. But I can also create a template that has a warm, friendly message in it, but that also has blocked content of like, here's the newest podcast episode, here's a really important blog post, here's a really cool book like Chris's book that I recommend, or you should go check out the Content College. And this is why. And it's a great way to build trust and build relationships beyond just your email list, but to create community and network within, to bring in the people that you trust, because that's the best thing you can do is get a recommendation from somebody. It's the warm handshake. And you can do that in an email still very easily on a marketing email.
Yeah. Brilliant. Hi, Corey. Thanks for joining us. It's a big Anna support. It's brilliant. I love it. So what would be, if there's one takeaway or one teaser that we can kind of drop for, how to build, or the power of email to build relationship? What would be a nugget that you think is the most important thing to think about when you are building a list or thinking about kind of branching out to having an email list?
Be yourself and be consistent, whatever that looks like. And I say that because we as business owners fall into this habit of not sounding like ourselves when we write. It's so interesting to me. I can talk to somebody and hear all of this amazing energy and passion and excitement in the way they talk about what they do. And as soon as you ask them to write it down, it suddenly sounds like boring corporate language speak. And I'm just like, how did we all get brainwashed into the idea that we all have to sound the same, that we all have to couch our language so much that we can't let our personalities out? Because I'm bored by all of that crap.
Well, that's why we became entrepreneurs and moved away from that corporate.
Well, and people join you and your movement and what you do because of who you are and your voice. And that's really important. Chris, this is a really great question. One of the big things that I will talk about in this is how to do this. But one of the things I like to think about is this is part of where things like the technical side of things, like segmenting and asking questions of your audience so that you are creating content that they are asking for, that you are talking about things that make them sit up and pay attention. I open emails from people whose voices I love because I'm always interested to see what's running through their brains at any given time. But I also have people who are really specific in the way in what they talk about. That like, I know that this is a tactical, practical email, and it might have that fun story in it, or it still has all of that personality. But I know that I'm going to get a meaningful nugget of that email that I can put into practice in my business easily and quickly. And so for me, the other thing to pay attention to in email is, how do you create quick wins? It's sort of like having a freebie. How do you give somebody a quick win or a thought-provoking question that makes them sit up and look around and away from their computer and think about who they're talking to and what they're doing, and maybe gives them an aha moment. And sometimes those questions are things you already ask yourself. So it's just learning to share those moments that you have. But it's also about asking, truly ask them what you want, what they want to hear about, what you want. Like, don't ask. And this is Chris understands this because Chris is a manifesting generator. Some people need open-ended questions, and some people you need to give them options as a starting point. So I am a big believer in creating ways for people to have open-ended responses. So that's why it's great to create ways for people to just give people a call to action that asks them to respond to your email, asks them to email you back or find you on something. Like, I love being able to say, you can come find me on Voxer, because I'm more than happy to chat with you on Voxer. As much as I'm also happy to respond to an email. But I also know that people don't love to, writing is not everybody's forte. In terms of the other way that I really like to do is sort of like what I described with Auto, where I ask them to click on the link that best represents what they're struggling with, because that creates a segment and it gives me a really clear idea of what I want to be talking about. And I can cycle through those options based on what people are clicking on to create content. And then I can also I can share that with everybody, because some people don't think they need it, but then get something out of it. Yeah. But I can also make sure that that particular segment gets that email or gets that content in front of them sooner. Yeah. And then in terms of frequency, this is this is like social media. You're going to talk to a lot of different people, and they're all going to tell you a bunch of different things, and it's going to sound overwhelming. There are people who are going to tell you that you should be emailing multiple times a week, and some people who are going to tell you that a welcome sequence should have 3 emails in the first 24 hours. I call bullshit.
Thank goodness.
100%. But in the same way that, like, I strongly and like definitively know that you don't need to be posting 3 times a day on Facebook. Like, you do not need to be creating that much content.
Yeah.
What does matter, and this is actually the most important thing, is consistency. So no matter what frequency you choose, be consistent. I have clients who send a monthly email and have amazing engagement, and they do it in more of a newsletter format, but it's not, so it's more of like a digest. They have that like warm message, and then it's like, here are 4 or 5 resources or things that I've created, and they pick a theme for the month. Then I have people in my life and in my community who send biweekly emails because they like to provide a more consistent update. I'm a big believer in the maximum you should be emailing people on a consistent basis when it's not something specific to like a launch sequence or that they're getting a welcome sequence because they just joined and you're building that trust in the very beginning. Is the most you should be sending people emails is once a week. So, and I think that once a week is a great way to do it, but that can be daunting. People can feel like they don't have enough to say. They don't have enough to share. And that's okay. I think that you're wrong. I think that everybody could write an email once a week because it doesn't have to be a novel. It doesn't have to be a long email. But I do think that the most important thing you do is create consistency because that creates trust. So sticking to it and saying, okay, I'm going to send an email every 2 weeks. Put it on the calendar, set a date, send it on the same day every week. Give yourself enough structure that you can commit to it, but not feeling like you're going to be overwhelmed, or you're going to start out and say, I'm going to do it every week. And then you miss a week and you're like, well, I screwed that up. So I'm going to throw it out the window and I'm just not going to write emails anymore.
Yeah.
But consistency, the beauty of setting a broader window. So let's say start with once a month, especially if you have an email list and you haven't been writing a lot. Warm people back up, let them know that they should be expecting something. Start sending a monthly email. And if you want to send it bi-monthly and you're already feeling good about that, go for it. But the beauty is once you feel confident that you're doing it at that level that you've set for yourself, give it some time, create the habit, create the consistency, see how it feels. And if you're getting to a point where you're like, I like this, I'm doing this, I'm not overwhelmed by my having to do this. Like, this is not the thing that keeps getting pushed down on my to-do list because I don't like doing it or I don't want to do it. Then when you're there, you can say, okay, this is working well. I'm engaging well with people, and you can up the frequency. And I don't mean like double it, but you could, if you're sending an email once a month, maybe you do go to twice a month. But it's just being able to say, do I want to do this? Do I think my audience would be up for this? And like prepping everybody that you're going to do it. But just pick a starting point and make it easy. I say the same thing about social media because everyone's like, I need to post something every day. And I'm like, do you want to post something every day? Do you want to create content like that? Do you feel like you have the capacity to do that? And what I often end up saying is, let's start with 2 or 3 days a week and let's set a schedule. Like you're going to post Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or you're going to post on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And you can, as it gets easier and you're creating content more consistently and you know how it works and it doesn't feel so foreign and time intensive because you're getting used to the format, you can reevaluate. That's the beauty of it. But the consistency teaches the system and your users that they should be paying attention. So it doesn't matter if you're posting 5 days a week on Facebook. If you're posting 3 days a week and you do it consistently, Facebook knows that you're creating content and it starts showing it more consistently to your users. It's the same thing with email, except that you're training a person to expect something from you. And then it becomes easy for you to engage in a format that you've already set the boundaries on. You're not meeting someone else's boundaries. You are setting your boundaries that work for you and reevaluating as you go. Corey, I hate social media.
Yeah, so Mickey's saying she loves the human design in the house, and that's just something I wanted to just touch on, because a lot of what you do is kind of based on understanding every person is different, and to understand yourself and to get to know what works for you is almost more important than training anybody else. It's kind of train yourself first as to understand what actually works, and human design is something you use as well, and which Mickey uses as a coach. And Mickey's got an amazing, because Anna created Mickey's website, so there's an amazing website to see at gaffinstone.com. And there you can get your chart as well, which is, I think, a great way to build that connection as well with yourself and your audience, because that's where it starts. And as Corey says, social media is definitely a love-hate relationship. It's like, yeah.
It is. And, you know, my biggest problem with social media is that it has become an echo chamber of your own views and your own spin out cycles. And it's so problematic for people in terms of actually like learning from each other and having real discourse. And the algorithms are designed to keep you locked on the platform, scrolling mindlessly. The one platform I will say this, I think there's also a difference, I think, between how we define what social media is and what other platforms are. So like Pinterest is not a social media platform. Pinterest is a search engine, a visual search engine. And while TikTok has a social component, TikTok is actually content. TikTok is a video content delivery platform. It is mobile video content in the way that YouTube is a video content platform.
Yes, I was just going to say, because YouTube is actually the second largest search engine, and not social media. Yet people spend most of their time, especially when you're 13-year-old, wink, wink, on TikTok. So it becomes, the lines are a bit blurred there, though, isn't it?
And I think while LinkedIn also has a social component, LinkedIn is not built around social like engagement in the same way. It's built around networking and business development. And while some of that is shifting because people are fleeing in droves from the meta universe, it is still less of that than it is a social, like a true, like personal social platform. And so when I talk about this with people, I'm like, social media is not content delivery. And so content delivery looks different. So I'm like, Pinterest content is important because it's visual search and it's used by more women than Google is. And the average YouTube account holder spends 14 hours a week on YouTube.
Really?
Yeah. And that's a stat from like 5 years ago. So I'm pretty sure that it's actually a lot higher now that video has taken over. But that is it. The average YouTube user spends 14 hours a week on YouTube.
Yeah. I had a chat with Anshar earlier today about long form content. So especially kind of, social media has been training, and I think it's maybe more a generational thing, but maybe not. We didn't really grow up with this dopamine rushes of instant gratification kind of lifestyle. So our brains hopefully developed a little bit more before it hit.
Mhm.
Yeah, so long form content is trickier to put out there, but yet the best conversations take time, and it's a little bit of a conundrum really around, eh, are these platforms disencouraging us from having deeper conversations and maybe understanding ourselves and others better?
Well, and that's the thing that's really great about email too,
Mm,
is that even though you're doing things in shorter form, you can still, I mean, you can very much write long form emails, but I'm
mm,
pretty sure that there are a number of people who are sitting in this chat who will tell you that they prefer shorter form emails that link out to other content. But
yeah,
the beauty of it is it's like having a long conversation with somebody.
yeah.
You're getting to know them, they're getting to know you.
Mm,
You're engaging in different ways, you're providing resources and content to each other, and everybody's getting something out of it. But instead of it happening like it is now, like we're having a back and forth, it's
mm,
taking space, it's taking time, and it's
mm.
creating space for reflection and processing and the ability to come back to the table.
Yeah, and that's one thing I love, because you go check the analytics every now and then to see,
Mhm.
who's looking at, and when you see it's been opened more than once, it's like, okay, I wonder, what, and then you can actually see where people click through, and you have an idea of, okay, that worked or that didn't work, and you get to understand your audience a lot better.
Right.
Chris says short form emails, yes.
Indeed. And Lauren, you're right. I think minimum viable
Yeah.
communications is absolutely something I should be putting out there.
Yeah. Well, that's it. That's it.
It is. It's like a minimum viable product. What is your absolute minimum baseline for success?
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, we need to engage with each other. Yeah, we have lives as well. I think especially with COVID and all that, people were online so much.
Mhm,
It's just unreasonable to think to post on Facebook or wherever 3 times a day,
mhm.
or live that kind of life. It's just not.
Well, and I think too, I remember in the pandemic, this was one of those things that was really interesting for me and was different from my peer group. I
Mm,
was already working online. I was already
too.
working with people all over the world,
Mm,
and I was already on Zoom on a consistent basis.
mm,
So that didn't feel different for me.
mm,
But what I finally had to start saying was no to people who wanted to be on, who like the number of happy hour, after hours, virtual hangout things. And I was like, guys, I love you all. I want to spend time with you. And but I can't handle this. It looks like another meeting on my calendar.
mm.
It's making my brain hurt. Um, and
Yeah.
yes, Lauren, that's actually one of the biggest things. I love the fact that, look, the reality is AI is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. It's going to get used. Kids are using it to write papers. It's like we're going to have to figure out how it works inside the education system. Google is already saying things like they are not going to care whether or not it's written by a computer as long as it's creating value and it's still unique.
Which is fair enough, really, isn't
It
it?
is.
Because we can become so much more creative, and it's, as you said earlier, it's about what you ask and what you look for and how you finish off that product or that piece
Right.
of
And
content.
so one of the things that I'm a big believer is, especially right now, AI writing tools don't sound human.
Mm,
And we're not there yet. I mean, I'm pretty sure we'll be there by the end of the year, but
mm,
we're not there yet. So asking, like pulling a blog post that was written by an AI and posting it without editing it, without making it sound like you, that doesn't help anybody.
mm,
But what I've found is really helpful for people, because creating content is overwhelming. One of the biggest things is I've had all of these clients over the years who are like, I want to have a blog. I want to share all of this knowledge that I have, but I don't have time. I can't, and I cannot write content like this.
mm.
And so one of the things we started doing, because I've been playing with AI tools for the last 2 years, so this ChatGPT is not really new for me. Um, is what I started doing instead was I started asking the AI to give me a content outline for a blog post, where it wasn't writing any of the content. It was helping me create the framework. And sometimes what I would do is ask it to write the introduction sentence or paragraph so that it gave you a good idea of what to think about. But what I would do then is hand that outline to my client, and I would say, fill in all of these pieces and tweak it so that it sounds like you, it sounds like something you want to talk about, and it feels authentic. But you're not staring at a blank page trying to figure it out, because instead of spending 2 hours staring at a blank page and then spending an hour writing, I'm now handing you something and you're spending 30 to 45 minutes filling it all in and using your expertise, and then handing something back to me that is authentic, sounds like you, and is already optimized for search.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've been playing with this, and this might actually be a fun thing to give everybody on Thursday, because it's not email related, but I have an on-page SEO checklist for blog posts.
Yeah.
And
it's brilliant.
And it has I have a prompt that you can ask ChatGPT to help you write your metadata for your blog post, so that you don't have to do that thing that nobody, like, helps you define the keyword and the metadata, so that you don't have to figure out how to write it effectively, and it's already optimized. And all you're doing is you're giving it the content you've already created, and then making sure you've done all of the other on-page technical things that should take you 10 minutes at most to do.
And but there's still that human element. So I've been doing it a bit, trying to see kind of SEO kind of stuff, and you still have to go back and say, excuse me, I asked for 156 characters, or can you make that shorter, or so which is good in effect, but we still we can't just copy and paste, because that's not how it works.
No. And I think that we're getting to a threshold where you can train AI to sound like you, but I will arguably tell you that until we have a better handle on the fact that the AI is scraping from information all over the internet, which is what makes it awesome, because it's scraping all of those data points. But the reality is we have a large portion of the internet that is creating misinformation. So the AI is incorporating mis and disinformation into what it is creating for you. And so it still needs to be truly fact-checked. It's not
all the time. Definitely. I had to have a conversation with it the other day. So I asked it for something. It was something about the goddess that the month is named after. So ChatGPT reckoned that April is named after Maya. And I'm like, but it can't be named after Maya.
Right.
So I'm like, sorry, excuse, are you sure? It was yes, no, it's sure. And it double checked. And then I went to Google and I pasted the Google bit and said, like, no, it's actually Aphrodite. No, it's not. So it actually had a disagreement with me on a factual, misrepresentation, which I was like, oh, hang on, we need to really be careful.
Right. And there is human fallibility built into the machine. And the biases that have been exposed or are inherently built into content created online are we have to really remember that they're there. This is not it's not perfect. It is as infallible as the content that is being input into it, which means that if there is disinformation or bias, it will create it. For instance, I was reading an interesting article about somebody who was using it, and it wrote an article about something technical, and it quoted it. It actually quoted them. It didn't lift it and plagiarize it. It quoted somebody about the topic that was an expert in the field. But what was really interesting was it identified the source, and it was a woman who had actually been quoted, but the AI attributed it to a man.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
So there are levels of infallibility built into this.
Which makes the human element still very important, as it will always be, because we are still, we have the metacognition and the stuff to kind of bring a bit more to the table than just that.
Right.
Yeah.
There's an AI tool on the market right now that tells me that one of the things that differentiates them is they say that it fact checks in real time. And I'm intrigued enough to want to try it because I'm not really sure I believe it. But that would be a huge differentiating factor.
Yeah. Well, that would be I mean, it would be very interesting to know whether how accurate that would be.
Mhm.
Yeah, because once we start relying on fallible fact checking, then it's all going to shit.
Right.
Yeah. And so where do people get hold of you? And how do they join Otto? How are other ways to work with you? All that stuff.
Um, well, you can find me at wickedmarvelous.com, which is currently, will tell you that is under construction as it has been for a while. But there is also a link on that homepage, on that landing page to join Otto. And Michelle has it posted in the video. So it's tc.wickedmarvelous.com/Otto. You can also reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's a great way to get a hold of me. And I do one-on-one consulting. I do I do one-on-one coaching, and then I have Otto right now. So those are the different ways to work with me. And we do everything from strategy and brand development through complex system implementation and website development and all of that fun stuff.
Brilliant. And from a person-centered space.
Yes,
Not
everything is person-oriented first in my
yeah,
world. And it
brilliant.
is all unique to the way you work, not the way I work.
Yeah, which is very unique, I think. And I'm really looking forward to Thursday, where you're going to come and teach us or show us a little bit more about ways to use email to build that trust and relationship with our audience. And I suppose a little bit about, how we can feel okay in doing it as well, because I know that's important to you.
Yes.
So you can get the ticket on Eventbrite, or it's free to Content College Club members. And this is a little bit more about Content College and our club. Thank you so much, Anna. It is always amazing chatting to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Enjoy your last little bit on holiday.
Thank you.
I know you're gonna have lots of fun. Thank
I'm
you.
going to enjoy the beautiful weather today and
Oh,
spend a
amazing.
lot of time outside, which I did yesterday and got sunburned because I didn't have enough sunscreen.
I dream of getting sunburned one day.
Yes, unintentionally. It was very beautiful outside, so we spent the whole afternoon in the garden with the dogs.
Oh, nice. Amazing. Well, going back to Denver tomorrow, hopefully the snow has melted.
Fingers crossed. It's gonna be cold for the rest of the week once I get home, so I'm like, I'm gonna soak it all up right now.
Exactly. Charge up. Thank you so much.
Thank
Chat
you.
to you soon.
Bye.